Okay, I mentioned to my patrons late last week that I was planning on using the terrain board again for a couple upcoming videos. Those are still being planned. One of my patrons asked a question though, what potentially would the battle space look like? You know, where should we position people where the enemy has their forward operating bases, combat outposts? Where should we put our base camps, our patrol bases? Where should we patrol at? Where should we ambush at? Where should we put caches in at? You know, just a general idea of how things could look so that people who never served in the military might have a little bit better idea. You know, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you should know about a half dozen different ways you could ambush an element, whether it's dismounted, they're out walking a patrol, or they're driving in vehicles on a road or cross country. You have somewhat of an idea on maybe some obstacle ideas that you could put in to slow an enemy and all this stuff. You've probably watched the videos on the logistics, on caches and supplying yourself, on the base camps, you know, what should you have in them, that type of stuff. And you're just wondering, how does all this kind of fit together? So I Ain't Combat Cameraman, we talked through after I was done with work today, and we kind of threw this together. We were tossing stuff willy-nilly across the board, you know, putting things out for the hell of it, and we will react to this battle space. Now, first I'm going to start off with caches. Ideally, your caches should be in before a conflict begins. So that way the vegetation has grown back if you've buried them in the ground or hidden them in vegetation. So they're not going to be found as easily. But if you're coming late in the game, you know, you'll probably be throwing them out. And when you throw them out, they will be based off the enemy's activity. So I have some markers written up here. We will put those out first. And I have them kind of set up differently. I have them set up as kind of caches for individual patrols to stop, grab what you need, and go. And I also have group caches. These would be located where you would potentially put a base camp. Now, first off, I'll put in some group caches. Now remember, these should be done in clusters. You do not want to put everything real close together. You want it shotgun scattered in a particular area. Have your standard of how much should be there. If you want like 500 pounds of beans and rice and other food items and ammunition and stuff in one particular spot, you have that as one cluster. You know, it's scattered around randomly in that individual area, and then maybe you have another cluster, say 500 meters away or 800 meters away, that if they find the one cluster, you still got another one in that area that you can still use for that base camp for you to sit at for a while. A base camp should be occupied for no longer than 30 days. Figure a minimum of a week. You do not want to be constantly moving. If you're constantly moving, you're not getting much done because you're constantly putting all your energy, all your efforts into survival, moving from one location to another. You're not putting too much hurt on the enemy. You're also making it easier for you to be found, you to be seen and picked up on a drone or from the Mark I eyeball. Every soldier's issued 2 of them. Alright, so let's say we have cache clusters down in here because this is a nice big wooded area. Down in kind of a valley. It's got decent drainage and that stuff. Maybe we got a stream or something, or a creek or a pond down here that we could use as a water source. You're going to want to locate your potential base camps relatively near a water source. You don't want it necessarily right next to it, but you want it close enough that you can send out that party to collect up the water and bring it back at least once a day. then you want to have at least 2 days worth of water in your base camp at all times. So we'll say we got a group cache down here that we put in food early in the war. Let's say we have another base camp cache we hid in this area in the woods up in here, located off of, it's on the top of a hill, so we got decent drainage. Like I said, maybe we got a creek or something running down in here. But we have to be careful of private property. Ideally, locate your caches on some type of government property. Either your local government, your state government, or federal government. Try not to trespass onto private property. If you do that, you're probably just going to create an enemy. Okay? Just be advised on that. So now we got 2 large group caches. And let's say we put in another one up in the woods in this area up in here. Let's say this right here was some type of state property. Maybe it's a state park. It's a wildlife refuge type area, whatever, and you located cache in there. Now we got those set up. Now we got to think about where should we put in our kind of like satellite caches. These will be small ones. This will have basically a one-stop shop for, say, a squad. Think of it that way. I'm actually working on that cache idea, trying to figure out how much food, how much ammo, and all that stuff to put in them. It's something I'm still working on. But patrol caches, these are spots where it might have 1 box for each squad. And the idea is that patrol stops when they're on the move or they're operating in that area. They pick up, clean out that cache, resupply themselves. They then close that cache back up. It's empty, and they can potentially store captured items there to replenish it. They can store MREs in there, or cans of ammunition, hand grenades still inside the cardboard canisters, mortars still inside their storage tubes, that type of thing. Now these, ideally you should have far more patrol caches than you do the group ones, obviously. Remember, you're going to go off of landmarks. So we're going to go over to the town here. We have a bridge that comes in. Let's say there's some type of state property there for whatever reason, a landmark or something. It's wooded or it's concealed in a draw. You're not going to be seen when you put it in. So you locate patrol cache down in there. This is pre-conflict. Now let's say you're going to have hopefully some safe houses. I marked a couple spots on here where there's safe houses. On those properties, these are friends, relatives, supporters of the unit. I would say put in patrol cache in there that you can use in emergency, like when you have to use it as a safe house. So we got a safe house here. We'll put a patrol cache in there. And we have another safe house over here. Let's say we located patrol cache back in the woods behind his farm. Now I got one more tab. Let's figure somewhere else we should put one. Let's say we located one over here on top of the hill. Once again, located off a landmark, one that hopefully we can find in the middle of the night. So we got our patrol caches put in. Like I said, base it off of squad size. If you're going to be running platoons, cluster them then. One cache box for this squad, and then another box for another squad, another box from another squad. Clustered, shotgun scattered in that area. Remember your markings and all that stuff. Now, conflict has begun. Enemy has moved in. So one of the first things they did, well, there was this nice big chunk of state land here, nice wide and open. This was our wildlife area. So they decided this would make a perfect spot to put a forward operating base. Oops, we had caches hidden right near that because we were planning on using this area here. The trees, the really heavily forested part of that state land, we were planning on using that as a potential base camp. Well, we're probably not going to be accessing those caches very often. We're probably not going to be putting that base camp in there since the enemy just plopped themselves right here and they put down at least a battalion there. Forward operating bases, you're looking at a battalion, maybe two. They're typically run as kind of a task force, usually, ideally. And you have your main operating bases, which are typically run by the brigade that supports them. So down in here, we're going to have combat elements. We're going to have some support elements. They'll have, you know, basic defenses. One of the things that I think you could potentially see now, because this actually proved itself overseas, you'll see the engineers come in. They'll dig a berm around the base, probably a relief cut berm, not a square cut. And they'll take the dirt from that berm, or from that tank ditch they're putting around it, and they'll make a berm from it. So a relief cut tank ditch, not a square cut tank ditch. I don't have this stuff written down. We're kind of going on the fly here between me and combat cameraman. So we'll have a berm. There'll be concertina wire potentially in front of the berm, maybe even on top of it for good measure. You're going to have, they'll be putting in watchtowers. They'll have bunkers dug into the berm. They'll have, you know, covered ways to move between bunkers, so you could have potentially a trench system behind the berm so that people can move back and forth without being under direct enemy fire. And they'll locate some type of indirect fire assets in there. Artillery, or at least heavy mortars, 120 millimeters. These will be located at the areas or orientated in a direction that they anticipate they're going to be putting the most fire on. So this forward operating base here, well, what are my most dangerous areas? Well, we got the town over there, so we're going to locate some of the artillery in that direction. And, well, we got this wooded area down in here. The enemy could attack them at any time going through here. So they'll locate some of that artillery pointing in that direction, and they'll have maybe some extra fighting positions on that side of the base. Ideally, if they're smart, and I can tell you from a lot of the reports I read from Afghanistan, things that happened there, intelligence is non-essential for certain MOSs, 11 Bravos. So they may not have the listening post, observation posts out where they should be, outside their base. But figure they're going to have, you know, their local interior patrols, which are going to be close by, and exterior, which are going to be farther out. So we have a forward operating base here. Nice big chunk of land. It's a command of the entire area. They can respond in any direction that's needed quickly. Now over here in the town, we decided the enemy decided because of distance, they need to put in a combat outpost over here because there's just a little bit too many questions about this town. You know, maybe that occupational government had access to social media, and they found that, hey, there's a lot of people that question the government in that town. Maybe we should station some people there to keep things under control. So maybe they'll take over the local police station, few buildings around it. They'll surround it with concertina wire, make their combat outpost there. Potentially, they'll bring in HESCO barriers. Look them up, HESCO barriers. Those are really common in the U.S. military. They were brought in filled with crap to make a wall around a combat outpost. And then you're going to have positions inside and on the buildings, you know, watching the area, overwatching the community. If you see any small pickups like this on the board, those are meant to be the local police that are under control of the occupational government. So we have the police station in this town is what they took over as a combat outpost. They will probably have mortars located in that town. Figure 60 millimeter, possibly 81 or 82. If the town is considered to be really important, maybe they'll put a 120 millimeter in there. And then accesses into the town, like this bridge, they will cover. They will put in positions to overwatch that, to control the flow of traffic into the town and the people getting out. And then you will have regular patrols going through the town, either on foot or on vehicle, keeping people in line. And then outside that town, they will run patrols, their exteriors around it, to make sure that the insurgents do not get inside. Now, we had the basic layout of the enemy, where they position themselves. Where should we locate ourselves in this battle space? Now, let's put it together. A hypothetical militia unit. Let's go back to the kicking boys that I usually used in the scenario videos. The Green Mountain Militia. So we got the Green Mountain Militia. They are roughly a company-sized element. They are running a headquarters section, which is roughly squad-sized, because you don't need a ton of people in headquarters. And then they have combat platoons, which are mixed. You know, they have some engineers, they have some heavy weapons, they have light infantry, all mixed together, kind of self-contained, their own mini task force in each platoon. Let's say there's 3 platoons. So first off, we need to locate our base camp. Now ideally, your base camp is going to be located in an area that's hard for the enemy to get to, but is located in a spot that at any given time you can send people out relatively quickly to do missions or to support the elements. So let's go back over here. We located currently, for this month, our base camp is down in here so that we can support potential operations against a forward operating base and against a combat outpost. Now, that's where your company headquarters is going to be at, and you're probably going to have 1 platoon in there doing local security. That platoon will also be training any new recruits, gathering up, maybe making additional ordnance and supplies, putting in additional caches in that area. Maybe stuff that gets captured on ambushes, it slowly makes its way back to the base camp, gets cleaned up, and it gets stored where needed. Now we're going to send out patrols. We're going to send out a platoon. So we have over here, we had base camp caches. Well, we got it near the town. Let's send a platoon into this area, and they're going to be inside these woods. They're going to keep watch on that town, keep watch on those patrols. Maybe they will do harassment, or likely should do harassment on that combat outpost. They should also be the ones that would attack any supply convoys that come in from the forward operating base to support that combat outpost. They would also be the ones that, if there's a large amount of prisoners in here that are going to get taken out, and it's usually easier to take them by truck, they're the ones that should ambush those trucks of prisoners coming out to free them. Those prisoners are going to be a good source of potential recruits for your unit. Keep that in mind. Now, where else could we put another patrol base? So we got one platoon there. Second platoon is over here at the base camp. Let's say we have another platoon operating back in this area to cover around up in here. So we got 3 platoons on the board. Now we have our enemy outposts that are located closer to our patrol bases, so to speak, and our base camp. We need to keep those enemy outposts under observation. So up here, overwatching the forward operating base, we're going to want to locate a rotating team on listening post, observation post duty. And their job, part of it, is going to be mapping this entire thing. If you got range finding equipment, use that. You know, make first a sketch of the outpost. Where's the defenses? Where's every tent? Where's every building? And then you add to it, where's the troops at? You know, where do they spend the most time at? Where do they park their vehicles? You add more and more information as you go on. Try to identify what weapon systems are in every defensive position, every bunker. Try to know what is in there. Typically, in a guard tower, you're going to have at a minimum up there a squad automatic weapon, if not a general purpose machine gun. General purpose machine gun, an M60, an M240, a PKM, an MG3. And then you're going to have 1 or 2 other troops up in there with rifles, potentially grenade launchers. These guys are going to be getting all that information, and while that's going on, they're also keeping a log on the enemy's activities. Patrols and stuff coming in and stuff going out, and how. You know, they will number the entrances and exits. We have a dismounted patrol coming out of exit 3 from over here, moving in the southeasterly direction to do a patrol back in here. They also will send the information back to the base camp back in here, so that they're aware of it. Maybe it's a potential attack coming in. Now over here, we're going to want to keep an observation post on this too. They're going to locate themselves in a position where they can hopefully keep watch on that combat outpost and maybe that entry point up in here. Doing the same thing like the other team was doing at forward outpost. Now, what else do we have on the board here? I have over here, we got a couple things going on. One of our safe houses was identified by a quisling, by someone who passed information to the enemy for their personal gain. So our enemy first put in an observation team to monitor the area. They're doing the same thing like our people are doing, monitoring the activity, who's there, who shows up, and all that information. That's used back at the forward operating base to plan the operation. And what they decided, they're going to put first a traffic control point over here to block this route so that no one can escape going this direction and no one can potentially come up and give them support over here. Then these guys are still keeping watch. They're going to launch that snatch and grab operation out of the forward operating base. So they're going to come up with as fast the vehicles as possible with the best weapon systems as possible. And to make it look legitimate, they will have the traitor police force with them, the people that are working with the enemy. So they're going to come in and they're going to take over the safe house, arrest everyone inside, and then they will load them up and take them out. Who should be the ones to take care of this? That platoon that's back in here. Let's say they're watching this road They have their own observation post up here. They see that snatch and grab going in. They seen a traffic control point going in. They had people that had eyes on a traffic control point, or maybe these guys reported to them somehow, some type of signal, you know, whatever you come up with. They see that snatch and grab coming out and they realize, holy shit, they're probably going after the safe house, so they're going to move at the quickest way possible to try to give them support. And then potentially they will show up there in time. But remember, they're going on foot. They are not going by vehicle. They will come in, set up quickly, and then they're going to try to help out the people inside this safe house. Take these guys on, take them out, help them to escape. You're not necessarily going to wipe these guys out. You're trying to help this family that's here to escape. Once they escape that safe house, this safe house is done. It's no longer a safe house. It's probably going to get burned to the ground. So now the safe house is cinders. And the family that was there, we either moved them to another location, another safe house, or they joined the unit to help out. And then when this platoon would rotate to the base camp, they would take those civilians with them, and then they would stay with the headquarters to assist them. Get the idea? Any operations against the forward operating base, because we have the base camp down here, will be launched out of here, and it would probably be raids and harassment, mortar attacks, rocket attacks. They'll come from down here, and they'll launch their attacks, preferably from a flank, to make the enemy think we're in a different direction than where we are. Remember, change the direction and location of each attack so that they're not going to get too much of a pattern. Obviously, the security patrol combat outpost will be hit by these guys over here. Now, I should mention we had a safe house over here. We have safe house over here. If things get too hot for these guys when they're hitting over here, they can't return to the base camp. They will make their way out of the area and move their way down to the safe house, wait there till the coast is clear, and then they'll find some way back to the base camp. Do you guys get somewhat of an idea on the area of operations? This platoon over here, that's their area of operations. The platoon down here at the base camp, this is their area of operations. The platoon that went over here, this is their area of operations. And your AOs should be easily identifiable as to where the boundaries is. We used to use roads, power lines, things easily seen on a map as your boundaries for each unit when I was in the military. A lot of those concepts can be transferred over to a resistance unit very, very easily. Now, I didn't mention inside that town, there is a Patriot cell in there, people that support the local resistance. They will do the best that they can, slip them food, maybe slip them supplies. If they need more rope, they need more nails, you know, whatever they need, tarps, plastic, maybe some new socks, new underwear, shirts, shoes, boots, whatever. They will try to help supply it from there as best as possible. Never, ever, ever steal from civilians. So these areas, these farms that weren't safe houses, do not steal from them. Okay, I can maybe understand grabbing some crops from the field, but don't steal it from the greenhouse. Don't steal it from the barns. Don't steal it from the storage bins, and never, ever, ever steal it from the residences. There you go. That's just kind of an idea for you on how the battlefield could potentially look like, how it could potentially work. This is just a really quick thrown together overview, okay? It's not completely in depth, but hopefully it gives you somewhat of an idea. Get your logistics in first, have some basic structure for a unit, hopefully, before a conflict begins. Have areas already picked out where you want a base camp at, where you could put a patrol base at, where you might be able to do as an observation point. Then when the conflict begins, you base where you go off of, where the enemy moves to, where they put their encampments at, where they put their supply points at. What routes did they use for patrols? What routes do they use for convoys? If they have a particular area they land helicopters at a regular basis, well, maybe that's somewhere along that route to that spot. That's where you're going to put your Stinger missiles, your SA-7s, SA-16s, so you can shoot down some of those aircraft coming in. Heavy machine guns, have them on trucks near that route. Helicopters are going by, they're opening up full can into the side, and then they shoot and scoot before the gunships are able to engage. Get the idea? If the enemy ever locates your camp, move as soon as possible, because a world of hurt is coming your direction, either airstrikes or artillery. Ideally, your camps, your patrol bases and base camps should be hidden in such a way that the enemy could literally walk right through the middle of it and not even know you were there. It's a concept I want to write up for a video. I just haven't gotten it around to it yet. I'm still gathering the information. So there you go for the patron that requested this. Hopefully this answers a lot of your questions. If you got any more, contact me and we'll talk it through some more. Now, for all my engineer brothers and the Patriot and militia movements, always remember, SA-ons.